Russia, home to some interesting stories and some even more interesting Darwin Award winners. In this video, I'm introducing you to 10 people who won their Darwin Awards in Russia. If you enjoy Darwin's and other people's stupidity, this is the channel for you. Be so kind to leave a like to ensure you don't win yourself a Darwin Award. Well, it can't hurt, right? Number 10. Double Mint Dumb. A 25-year-old chemistry student had acquired the peculiar habit of dipping his chewing gum in citric acid crystals while he worked, presumably to add a zesty flavor. He was hunched over at a computer in his parents' house when, whether by intention or inattention, the student dunked his gum into an unidentified chemical and stuck it back into his mouth. A loud pop was heard coming from his room. Reports really said that. Putting aside the question of what he was doing with chemicals at home, the student was well aware of the need to keep them away from food. Every academic laboratory emphasizes the importance of never eating near chemicals because it's so easy to confuse a tasty beverage with a toxic liquid, or salt your salad with arsenic. But there he was, deceased, the lower part of his face gone. He had blown the ultimate bubble. Number 9. Crutch meet crotch. Late one night, Edward entered the apartment of a 30-year-old handicapped man who slept peacefully as Edward quietly cleaned out all the valuables. Edward was preparing to leave when suddenly the man woke up. I couldn't believe my eyes. The shape of some goon was standing next to my nightstand, recalls the victim. I cried out and he attacked me with his fists. I had no choice. I hit him between the legs with my crutch and he leapt out the window. Thank God I live on the first floor. I didn't understand at first what had fallen out of his pants. When I looked closer, I realized it was his giblets. I put it in cold water and rushed to the phone. Half an hour later, the thief was found by a passerby who called the police. An unconscious man was laying on the sidewalk, said the police investigator. When the medics revived him, he started screaming hysterically, "Give them back!" Edward's family jewels were so traumatized that doctors had to amputate them entirely to prevent gangrene. In the hospital, the burglar filed a complaint against his victim. He said, "I will never forgive him." Number 8. The Alchemist. As a child, Sergei promised his grandmother, "I will establish for you the elixir of immortality. I want you to live forever." As an adult, we find Sergei sitting in his college biology class, licking potassium cyanide off of his palm. He had found the magic elixir. He swallowed toxins daily to strengthen his body and protect him from death. He regularly consumed small quantities of toxic mushrooms, arsenic, and cyanide salts, and urged others to join him. After swallowing the cyanide, he began to feel ill and asked his classmates to fetch some water. But instead of drinking plain water, he dissolved the rest of the cyanide powder in it and consumed the solution. Sergei was an intelligent student, interested in chemistry and anatomy. He had earned a gold medal and was accepted into 2 universities. But Sergei's scientific premise was flawed. Instead of immortality, he had discovered the elixir of mortality. He went into convulsions, slipped into a coma, and later passed away. His father praised Sergei as a gifted chemist who died for the sake of science. Number 7. Instagram Idiot. A young Russian, Andrei, was used to taking dangerous selfies for his Instagram. He was often pictured standing high up places such as rooftops. Friends of the youth had warned him about taking risks when he attempted to take selfies, including several where he dangled from buildings or stood on girders far above the street. The final Instagram picture showed the 2 piles of rope and harness he had apparently attempted to use when he fell to his death. The Instagram page has since been closed. Number 6. Red Evolution. A welder is in the evolutionary spotlight today. Vargas worked for the Enterprise for the construction, repair, and maintenance of highways in Russia when he noticed how well a fire extinguisher fits into a decommissioned artillery howitzer. Inspired, he stuffed the fire extinguisher down the barrel. Trained to use the elemental powers of hot plasma, welders are normally not daredevils, but Vargas was determined to prove the old adage. There are old welders and bold welders, but there are no old bold welders. He charged the cannon with calcium carbide and water, a reactive combination that produces acetylene welding gas. The abused fire extinguisher exploded from the howitzer cannon, and pieces of the payload brained the welder, whose head was conveniently located in the ballistic trajectory of the shrapnel. In a fight between shrapnel and an empty skull, shrapnel always wins. Number 5. Moscow Marauder. Divorce can be an ugly thing. None as bad as this next couple, one would argue. A Russian man was in the midst of an ugly divorce with his wife. He had threatened many times to deal with his wife and her new boyfriend. One day he collected some odds and ends and made his own explosive. He headed for his wife's apartment to attach it to the door and end all of his troubles once and for all. And that is exactly what happened. His wife came to her new home to find her husband scattered everywhere. And just like that, the divorce was finalized. Number 4. Virtual reality, virtual Darwin? Virtual reality really is something amazing. It's so immersive you can forget the real reality you are in. As was the case with one Russian man who had bought a brand new VR set and decided to play it in his apartment living room. If you know anything about virtual reality, you know you need some space to enjoy it to the fullest. That way you're not knocking into things or tripping. Our newly found Darwin winner did just that. While in the midst of his VR, he tripped and fell onto his table, his glass table. He received multiple cuts from this and passed away soon after. This is the first recorded incident of VR-related passing ever recorded, and that honestly surprises me with all the Darwin things we hear of. Number 3. A tasty pastry. Alexandra Udina, a trained paramedic, was having a grand old time at the bar after work one day when her and 2 others decided to have an eating competition and see who could eat the most cake. Drinking and eating cake sounds like a horrible idea right from the start, but alas, the race began. She ate the first cake and then brilliantly decided to get a one-up on the other 2 contestants by eating the next 2 cakes in one bite. Suddenly, our 23-year-old paramedic gasped for air and collapsed to the floor with her mouth apparently still full of cake. Bar staff and her friends, who also had medical qualifications and probably should have been able to help, couldn't figure out how to clear the blockage and the woman passed away. She didn't win the eating contest as she never swallowed the last 2 cakes. However, she did win a Darwin Award for stuffing her face. Number 2. Drinking for dollars. YouTube viewers were left in shock after a man who was drinking vodka while streaming the act live died. The Russian man took up the challenge of finishing 1.5 liters while streaming the act live on YouTube. According to the report in The Independent, the Russian man was apparently offered money for this act. The challenge was among the many thrash streams or trash streams that have become a trend on social media, where users are challenged to perform humiliating acts or stunts in exchange for money while a huge audience watches it live. The man, named in local media reports as Yuri Doshekhin, was allegedly offered money in exchange for drinking alcohol or hot sauce on air. Being the proud Russian he is, he chose the obvious. He is said to have died after consuming about 1.5 liters, his body still visible to viewers as the live stream continued to record. Number 1. Absolutely radiant. Mayak is a nuclear fuel processing center in central Russia that was experimenting with plutonium purification techniques. The report states that they were using an unfavorable vessel in an improvised operation as temporary vessels for storing plutonium organic solution. Basically, they were pouring liquid plutonium into unsafe equipment. 2 operators, as instructed by their shift supervisor, used one of these improvised setups to remove a dark brown solution. The shift supervisor then left to tend to other duties. During the second filling of the bottle, a mixture of 2 solutions was drawn in. As a result, the operator stopped filling the bottle. One asked the shift supervisor for further instructions. He was told to continue what he was doing. After most of the solution had been poured out into the drain, the operator saw a flash of light and felt a pulse of heat. Startled, the operator dropped the bottle, ran down the stairs, and from the room. The plutonium was too concentrated, and he accidentally started a nuclear chain reaction. The alarm sounded and everyone evacuated. So far, no fatal errors. His subsequent actions were not observed by anyone. However, there was evidence that he attempted to pour the plutonium into a floor drain again. His actions caused a 3rd excursion, larger than the first 2, activating the alarm systems in both buildings. The shift supervisor proceeded to set off an even bigger nuclear chain reaction. The shift supervisor, covered in plutonium, immediately returned to the underground tunnel. 1 month later, he passed away, having received 4 times the fatal dose of radiation. Everyone else survived. I hope you enjoyed Darwin Awards from Russia. If you did, please leave a like. Want more Darwins now? Watch this video or watch this playlist for non-stop Darwin entertainment.